What's up, guys? So today we're going to be looking at the Samsung Galaxy S series here. If you're on a budget and you're looking for a smaller Galaxy phone here, I've been able to use quite a few of them. So we got the S10, and this is going to be the base model edition. We did the Plus models and the Ultra series, so we're going to do the base model today. So we got the S10, S20, S21, S22, and S23. I have used the S24, but it's not really come down in price yet. So we're gonna wait till like the S25. That phone should come down in price, then I'll pick another one up. But yeah, so let's talk about this, because in the used refurbished marketplace, these phones are extremely good. You can find these phones easily. Like we just went over the S20, we got for $109. These phones you can find $150, $200. Even the S23 is going for a still pretty reasonable price point here, and this is probably one of my favorite phones to recommend to anybody who's looking for a smaller phone. But you could find this for, let's see what eBay has it going for. It shouldn't be less than 400. S23 Plus, or it should be cheaper than that. S23 we see 300 in excellent condition. So you could find this phone in pretty good condition. Here we go, S23 314. Yeah, so as you guys can see, very cheap for these base models, and there are some pros and cons with the base model. And let's go ahead and just talk about the overall design here. So the S10, the S20, you can see they have two completely different designs, and then it sort of caps off, and then Samsung has really stuck with this design, getting rid of the camera cutout with the S23 series now. But as you can see, the camera switched up right here. And one thing that I like is they went with a matte finish on the later models here. You can see you got the glossy finish on the older models. But yeah, so Samsung's not really switching up the design on their phones at all now. It's been very, I guess, boring over the past years. But it's also, for them, probably they want a more consistent design that people can recognize, right? Now, one thing that you'll notice is with the S10 series, this is the series that had the headphone jack and the SD card support, which a lot of people like. A lot of people like having the headphone jack and SD card support. And that's something that actually got removed with the S20 series. So now we have no headphone jack, but we still keep the SD card support. So this is why this phone is still pretty popular, these days. And then after that, they completely got rid of SD card support and headphone jack. And now we just have, your internal storage, and you have to basically pay more money and upgrade the configuration, which is unfortunate, because what I've learned from this channel is a lot of people still really like having the option to expand the memory. When we move over to the displays here, you can see, again, not much has changed with the displays, but there are some pretty interesting things here. So they're all pretty much the same panels. They look the same, and they're all around these 6.1 to 6.2 inches. Very easy to hold. So this is why a lot of people like these smaller base models. They're not as big, and you can easily one-hand these phones. So the interesting thing that I thought with the spec sheet was that the S10 and S20 have 1440p displays, so you can use these at 1440p. But the S21 and up, they only stuck to 1080p displays now, which I thought was, really interesting. It could be for battery life, but I'm not sure. But that is something that I've always been curious about, on why they downgraded the displays. But as you can see, not much has changed. They still all have that really nice Samsung colors. The biggest upgrade with displays is obviously, probably the 120 hertz, right? Besides the 120 hertz, they, like I said, look the same. They feel the same. And you can see the S10 here is the only phone with the 60 hertz panel. So pretty interesting stuff here, but largely the same here. So Samsung screens have been on point for such a long time that even if we went back to like an S9, S8, you still see an excellent panel, and it still looks pretty similar, right? So yeah, the bezels have got a little bit thinner, but really the displays are roughly the same, guys. So when we move on to the processors here, what's interesting about the processor situation is it's been very inconsistent some of the years. So with the older phones, these processors are actually more consistent when it comes to not overheating or anything like that. You don't have a lot of those complaints with the Snapdragon 855 and the 865 here. It's only when we move over to this AAA processor and the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 is when we have those issues with not necessarily performance, but overall heating when you are playing games a lot. Now, I've never had that issue because I am not a hardcore gamer, so I've never really had that issue. But one of the best processors that Samsung has put in their phones has been the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. It's been extremely consistent. It's been very, very good when it comes to not heating, giving you great performance, and also battery life has been significantly better. This is when you see a big difference in terms of screen on time when you get to the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor. The Snapdragon 865 chipset is pretty good, but the battery life is not as good as on an S23, like even if this was brand new. So if you want like very good battery life, I would get like an S23, S23 Plus or something like that. But yeah, so you see that big difference on the smaller models when you get to the S23. The rest of these kind of drain are pretty much the same. Now this is something that you may or may not care about, but with the newer models, you do get the AI feature. So the S10, S20 are not getting majorOS updates. The S21 will get Android 15. The S22 will get Android 16. And of course, you get more updates on the S23. The biggest difference with software is the AI features. So you do have circular search on the S21, but that's it. It doesn't have any other AI features. With the S22 and S23, and of course the S24, you do get the AI features here. So you get majority of them on the S22. I think there's like maybe one missing. And yeah, it's really nice for those who are interested in the AI stuff. You like the stuff right here that you're seeing. I never use the AI stuff, honestly. I tested it out and it just wasn't something I would use. I do like the AI email writer that they have on here, which is pretty cool. So it'll kind of write a formal email or text message or whatever message you want. That was pretty cool, but everything else besides circular search, I just never use. So it's really up to the person. But as far as like One UI throughout the years, you guys can see even if on a S20 or S10, you can see it really has not changed that much. Samsung is doing a visual overhaul with the One UI 7 update, so it'll look a little bit different. But as far as software, there's really not too much going on. As long as the apps are updating, you could use these older models, for a very long time, honestly. Now, as far as gaming performance goes, guys, I always highly recommend a old flagship for gaming. A lot of people, if you're not kind of like into tech and stuff like that, they'll think they can buy a mid-range phone, just like a cheap mid-range phone, $200 or something like that, and then you'll get pretty good gaming performance. But you get excellent gaming performance if you go with the old flagship, much better than something like a Galaxy A35 or something like that. So you can see on the S20, which again we bought for $100, just did the video yesterday, can still play PUBG at smooth extreme plus. So we can play PUBG at 90 frames and it's very smooth. There's no heating problems. Even the S10 can still play at HDR extreme, so it can play pretty smooth at 60, and it's pretty consistent across the board. So whether you get the S21 or 22, like I said, the gaming performance I think is really good on the S23, and because you have just much better battery life as well too. But all these phones, if you game a lot, they'll take a hit to the battery life. But the S23, it does 120 frames, and just like we saw, if you spend $300, you get to have a very good gaming experience with good battery life for $300. So that's why I said consider our old flagship if you are into gaming. I mean, playing PUBG at 120 frames for $300 is extremely good. So definitely avoid the mid-range phones when we're looking at gaming performance. But yeah, all these phones do a very good job with gaming, honestly. So speakers at max volume. Start with the S10. Okay, so you do notice a significant difference from the rest of these phones. So the S10 to the S22. The S23 has much stronger bass. Yeah, it's very noticeable as well. So I would say the speakers are very similar until you get to the S23. Let's touch on the camera. So what's awesome about the S10 series phones, or take two. All right, so let's talk about the image quality and the cameras. I think what's good about the base model S10 series in general is that you actually get the telephoto lens with these phones. So the reason I mention that is because its main competitor, the iPhone, does not give you the telephoto lens, right? So you want to get that dual camera setup. Apple's still doing it with the iPhone 16. They only do it on the Pro model. So being able to have that telephoto lens is really nice on a base model. I think Pixels as well don't have a telephoto lens on the base. So it's really cool to have that. So I always thought that, you know, it's just really good for that. And then also image quality, like I said, if you watch my channel, the image quality is still really good on an old flagship like we did the S20. It still looks extremely good. So I might do like a direct comparison, but it looks great, guys. So the biggest issue you'll run into with an old flagship like the S10 or an S20 is honestly the low light photography. Is not going to be as good as on an S23, for example. But yeah, as you guys can see, you can still get some really good shots out of the S10 if you're in good lighting and stuff like that. So yeah, the cameras aren't going to be as good in low light, but in good lighting, you still get an excellent shot. But all of these take really good pictures and videos and stuff like that. So I've never really had an issue with that. So you can really just pick up any of these phones. But like I said, if you're into social media and stuff like that, because I get questions like that, I would get an S23 because this does have very good video, very good low light as well too. So, you know, I would get this for social media personally. So I would save up the money, you know, spend that $300 and get this for social media, and it looks great. So you can film your content with it. But like I was saying, you can still get a very good shot out of all of these phones. So yeah, so that's pretty much it for this base model series. You know, the base model, they're talking about getting rid of the base model Galaxy phones as well too. And I think it's because most people, they want a bigger screen and they don't really care about how comfortable a phone is, you know, which is interesting. So I've been seeing rumors about that. So it would be sad because, you know, these phones are very comfortable to hold. And I think once they, you know, nailed the battery life situation in the S23, S24, these are really nice phones to consider to buy, guys. So yeah, so what do you guys think? I will catch you guys in the next one.